Hey, I'm Brooke Halliday, licensed professional clinical counselor and your host of Coloring Outside the Lines. I believe that we are the byproducts of our experiences and the environments in which we were raised, and most of us have earned a few scars from those things over the years. I've been making it my mission to help people learn to accept themselves and have compassion for everything that they've survived. Through deep and vulnerable conversations with some amazing women, you're going to hear about major moments in their life when they chose to color outside the lines and demonstrate firsthand just how capable we all are. So get ready to be inspired as we color outside the lines and make something beautiful. I truly could not even tell you when I met today's guest. It feels like I have known her forever. She was a friend of my brother's initially when I met her, and I have had the privilege to get to watch her grow up a little bit and become a licensed clinical social worker. Becca agreed to come and talk to me about her experience with her son, Cal, whom she lost in 2021 when she was 38 weeks pregnant. Becca was willing to share with me what it was like to learn that her son had passed away and how she has been trying to move forward. I have so much love and respect for Becca and how she not only parents her living children, but also Cal, her son that she lost. Becca has navigated the process of being a parent to a child who isn't on earth anymore with so much grace and dignity and has really been inspirational. Listen now to hear her story.
So my husband and I had been married for about 3 years, and we decided that we were ready to start our family. And so we got pregnant pretty quickly, which is an amazing blessing. And, it was kind of unexpected because it was so quickly, but at the same time, we did want it and we were super ready.
Did you guys have like a number of kids in mind that you were hoping to have? I mean, people talk about like, oh, I want X number and this is what our family's going to look like and all the things.
Yeah, I think my husband's always wanted more kids than me, but that's because I know that I have to be the mom and I have to be pregnant. So I always said like 2, and he's always wanted 3, which have just always played it as like, let's just see how it goes because you never really know, which I guess is a good thing knowing now what we experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also like a type A person. I need to plan for everything. And so I wanted to find out what we were having as soon as possible. So we found out at 12 weeks that we were going to be having a boy, which is super exciting. I think I've always wanted a boy. And, I think girls are probably harder just because there's usually more emotional and all those things. And so I was like, no, I definitely want a boy. So we were really excited about that. And yeah, my pregnancy was really great. I was barely sick. Like I don't mean to say that to make anyone jealous because I know that I've met so many moms that have had just really tough pregnancies. But I say that just because when I was 38 weeks pregnant, we had an appointment. And, once you get that close in your pregnancy to the end, you're going in like every week. And so I had an appointment on a Monday and everything was fine. We could hear his heartbeat. And then the next day, it must have been a Tuesday.
I'm going to pause you for a second. So type A person, how much research had you done about giving birth? Had your friends had kids? Like, tell me how informed you were, all of the things.
That's a super good question. I was, 100% a planner. We actually hired, it was kind of during COVID still. So They weren't doing in-person birthing classes. I got pregnant in July of 2020. And so by the time he was due in April of 2021, the beginning of April of 2021. So everything was still like really locked down. I mean, I could go to in-person appointments and those kinds of things, but everyone was masked and they weren't doing in-person classes. And so we actually hired to come to our home and do like classes with us. So
So for people who don't know what a doula is, can you just explain that really quick?
Yeah, so a doula is basically a birth coach. So at that time, I really wanted to do a natural birth. So
Ah,
she,
girl, you're crazy.
okay, I say that though at that time because everything changed
Hmm.
100%. But yeah, I wanted to try it. And I was also like knowing, okay, I I'm fine if it's not going to work out that way, but I wanted to try it. And so, yeah, she came and we talked about different birthing plans and she explained a lot of things to us that we never knew about because yeah, we are like the first of our friends to be pregnant. And so I feel like yeah, I was yes, very meticulous on how I wanted things to go and like I wanted to know everything about the process. So yeah, I definitely had a vision of exactly what I wanted. I mean, I was going to give birth in the hospital still, all of that, but we were going to have the doula there. We were going to, go through all of these natural birthing processes. And so I went to work the next day and by like maybe 10 a.m., I just wasn't feeling a whole lot of movement. And so, I did all the things that they tell you to do, like you sit down, eat a snack, you know, walk around, blah, 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 whatever. And so it was probably right before lunchtime that I called the clinic and I just said, hey, I'm just not feeling a whole lot. Like, I think I should come in. And they were like, yep, 100% come in.
What was going through your head at that time?
So I'm a school social worker. So at that time, I was working at an elementary school that's directly across from the hospital. So it was literally right across the street. I was like, I'm just going to swing over there. And I had no concerns really, like, because when you are a normal person who's never experienced the loss of a baby,
Right.
you don't ever even think that that's a possibility at 38 weeks pregnant that that your baby wouldn't live. And so I was just at the doctor yesterday. Everything was fine. It never crossed my mind that there was going to be something wrong. And so I went in and they hooked me up to like the NST, and I didn't even know actually what an NST was at that time because I had never had to have one. And so it was a machine I hadn't really ever seen before, but she was looking for the baby's heartbeat and she couldn't find it. She found my heartbeat, which at that time was like almost 100 beats per minute. And so she kind of thought like, oh, maybe that's the baby, but I was like, nope, that's yours. So then she called in my doctor and they brought in an ultrasound machine, and I was panicking a little bit at that time, I think, of just like, okay, what's going on? This is kind of weird. And when my doctor put the ultrasound machine on me and the look in her face, I could just tell. And she just looked at me and said, you need to call your husband. And I knew at that time that he was,
Oh, I
yeah.
just got goosebumps.
So yeah, it's hard actually for me still to think about that time and that day because I've never experienced something so like traumatic, I guess, or just like such a significant loss, right? And like that sudden feeling of your whole world is crashing down around you.
And something so surreal that nobody has ever, I mean, nobody in my life ever talked about baby loss and, that's a possibility with pregnancy. Like, sorry, they skipped that in health class, that's a possibility.
Yeah. Right. And I think that that's why it was so, yeah, like even thinking about me just going to the hospital and where my head was at that time, not even crossing my mind that I would.
Yeah, I'm curious what made you even go to the hospital if you weren't like feeling anxious or on edge or anything.
I know. I think that it just felt different. Like I just was like, something isn't right. He hasn't been moving. And, now experiencing pregnancies after that, I know that like that's not normal, to not feel your baby move for a couple hours when you're that far along in your pregnancy. And so yeah, I think I just they had talked about briefly had talked about kick counts, those kinds of things, but it must have just been a instinct of mine that I was like, something's not right, because
Yeah.
I know for a fact that I was not as hyper vigilant on all those things as I am now, at that time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just fell apart. I cannot even describe, like, I think I'm usually a pretty level-headed person, and so like crying, screaming, those kinds of things in public is something that I never would do. But I had no control over my body and my emotions at that time. I was on the floor sobbing, like, just like, you could hear me. And now that I think back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the nurses and the other doctors in my OB unit were probably just like, I'm sure that they were so shaken too, but like, I'm sure they could hear me sobbing in this room by myself, because yeah, it was terrible. And so I
Did
called.
anybody try and, like, physically comfort you? I'm also aware, like, COVID, and so, like, did people keep
Yeah,
their distance? Like, a weird time to be pregnant and, like, all of that.
yeah, it was, yeah, no, like my doctor left the room. Like after she told me to call my husband, she left the room. The nurse left the room. And then I think they told me that they would be back with a wheelchair, because they had to take me down to ultrasound I don't even know why, honestly. I don't know why they had to take me down to ultrasound. I should ask my doctor about that, because that seemed like such a weird thing to do at that moment, because they had to like put me in a wheelchair. They wheeled me through the hospital all the way down to the third floor, or the basement of the hospital. I was on the third floor, and like in front of people, like people could, that were like waiting in the lobby. And yeah, and then the whole time that I was in the ultrasound room, I just remember covering my face and sobbing. And by that time, I had gotten back up to the OB unit. My husband had gotten there. And I think I was just like, okay, what do we need to do now? What's next? Because I have a full grown baby inside of me, and I still have to give birth to this baby. So she just explained kind of what would happen, and that I could come in. She's like, we can go down to the birthing unit now. You can go home and pack and then come back tonight. You could go home and stay the night at home and then come back in the morning. Like she gave me my options. And honestly, when you're in that situation, you just want this nightmare to be over. And so
Absolutely.
I was like, get this baby out of me, and I want to be done. Like
Yes.
I don't want to be experiencing this anymore. And so yeah, we went home, we packed up, and we went back to the hospital right away, and they started inducing me. Oh, I think it was probably like 7 o'clock at night that they started the process, and they gave me like all the drugs that I wanted, because I was like, I don't want to feel anything, which was so different than, my plan. And so I remember looking at my doctor when I got to the birthing unit and just being like, what do we do? Like, what do I even do now? Because this is not, this was not part of the plan.
Yep.
And do I give birth to this baby naturally now? And she just said to me, I don't think that you want to feel any more pain than you're already experiencing. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
You're
and I
sweet
was like,
doctor.
yeah, and I was like, you're right. Like, why would I torture myself with this? So yeah, we just started inducing.
What's your husband doing during all of this? Like, is he keeping his shit together?
We both were crying. I mean, he was very strong for me throughout the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, he's not like an emotionless person, thankfully. But yeah, he was crying. We were both crying. Like, we also are the type of people that kind of use humor to cope. And so I think, we were still like, sounds weird, but we were like still in the room, like laughing about certain things, just trying to make it through and survive.
Mhm.
But yeah, it took about 12 hours active labor, I would say. And then he was born the next morning. And it was like so weird. I don't know. Like now, at that time I didn't know any different, but
Yes.
now knowing kind of what the process looks like when you are giving birth, this was different. So like it was just me, my husband, one nurse, and my doctor in the room and nothing else. And we were in like a small room, and there weren't a bunch of machines hooked up to me, because there's nothing to monitor. Like they weren't monitoring for baby's movements or heartbeat or anything like that. So it was quiet, which is another thing that I know now is abnormal. And so, yeah, he came, and it was like a wave of grief all over again, because I think that something changes in you after you see your baby. Like I wasn't really expecting that feeling. I honestly thought that, I'm going to have this baby and they're going to take him away, and this nightmare is going to be done. Like I'm done with this. But as soon as he was born, I didn't want to let him go. I didn't want to give him back.
Did they ask you if you wanted to see him and hold him, or did they just give him to you like they normally do after you have a baby? Like, was there a conversation about that?
Yeah, I don't actually think that they never said like anything about me not holding him, because I think if they would have, I maybe would have said no at the time, which is so weird to me now. But
But the
you,
thought of holding a dead baby, like,
yeah,
it's unnerving, like, even to hear those words come out of my mouth, and, like, I'm sure for people to hear me say those words, like, it does something, like, to the core of you that, like, it's just something that's so unfathomable.
right, exactly. And I didn't know. I did ask, and I'm so thankful that I asked, but I asked like what he would look like coming out, because I wanted to be prepared for that, because I had no idea. But like the things that they told me, like his head wouldn't be as solid, just because babies have such like soft skulls anyway. And so when there's no blood flow going through their brain, their skull is not going to be like a solid skull. It's going to be kind of softer. So like that was something that I was really happy they told me about. And then like he had some peeling skin, and so that was another thing that was good to know ahead of time. But gosh, yeah, I mean, he was so perfect. Like holding him, he was 21 and a half inches long, so super long, and 6 pounds, 1 ounce. Like he was just so perfect. And, we looked at his hair, and he had dark hair like me, and his lips and nose were just perfect. And so, yeah, like holding him was so surreal. It is not something you ever think that you are going to do. And it just, I mean, he was ours, like he was our baby. And so it didn't matter that he was not alive. So yeah, I think you have to stay in the hospital after you get an epidural. I think they told me you have to stay for at least like 6 hours or something like that. And so we were probably there with him for 7 to 8 hours that day. And they gave us the option if we wanted to stay the night with him, we could. But I just was like, why? I mean, at that point, you're like, all we're doing is literally holding him and looking at him and crying, you know?
I know
So,
you got a couple photos with him just from what I've seen you post on social media. How else did you spend your time with him?
yeah. So, thankfully, the hospital, so there's a few different things that they did that were so amazing. And I know now it's because of a really wonderful group of women that also lost babies that they have these options in the hospital. But they gave us a basket filled with different kinds of, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just different kind of memorabilia. Is that the word? I don't know, but like keepsakes. That there you go.
Mhm.
Different keepsakes. So there were, like Christmas ornaments, little angels. There was a teddy bear, a book, a hat for him. Just a lot of different things and resources as well. And then they had the option of, having somebody come and take pictures through an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And I remember the nurse asking me if I wanted them to come take pictures, and I said no. And that's another thing that's like, I can't even imagine if I didn't have those pictures now.
Mhm.
But I was like, no, that's weird. Like, why would I want that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to relive this memory. And so when they came, they got some pictures of just Cal. They got pictures of us and him. And the nurse said to me, going back to that, she was like, you don't ever even have to look at the pictures if you don't want to, but at least you'll have them. And so I was like, okay, fine. And
Oh,
so,
that nurse.
yeah, she was so sweet. And so I'm so glad that she convinced me to say yes, because I have those pictures now up in our house every. And so, he, if we didn't have those pictures, I don't know what I would do. And I'm very grateful that we have them. We did that. I mean, I, I sang to him. I gave my husband some time alone with him because I, wanted him to be able to say all the things he would want to say, without me there. And so, we talked to him. My husband's mom actually came to the hospital and she was able to hold him, which is something that they weren't doing at the time, actually. They weren't letting family in, but because of our circumstances, they were like, absolutely, if any family members that you want to come visit him, please tell them to
Was
come.
was that a hard decision for you to let her come in? That's like a very private and sacred moment for you guys.
Yeah, it wasn't something I ever thought about. So
Right.
he called her, to let her know. We called both of our parents to let them know, and then tell them to let our other family members know. And she just said, "Can I come?" And I was like, I didn't think that anyone would want to come, I guess. And so I was like, well, yeah, that's fine, I guess. You want to see your grandson. And now, like, that was something that's so sweet. I just feel like,
Yes.
for her to
Yes.
just say, like, I want to come and I want to be there, and see him. And she didn't stay for long at all, but she wanted to see him no matter what he looked like, and that was something that was really special to me now. So, I think we have a really good relationship because she lost her husband suddenly. So Dan's dad passed away when he was 21. And I feel like that is such a significant loss, obviously, to lose your husband so suddenly and at a young age, that she can relate to our loss, and how much it just shocks your system. So she's been a huge support for both of us through this.
Did you guys have a name picked out for Cal before you had him?
Yeah, yep. Which is like another thing that I is forever changed for me, because we called him Cal throughout my pretty much my whole pregnancy. That was a name it's a family name, and it was a name that I always wanted to name my future son. And so when he was born, we kind of had like a dilemma of like, well, we really like this name, and do we want to use it for a living child? And it didn't feel right to just suddenly change his name because he was not alive. But we did decide so his name was always supposed to be Cal Richard Sharpstein. And so we actually decided to switch his middle name and first name. So technically on his like death certificate, his name is Richard Cal Sharpstein, just because that way we thought, well, if we want to use the first name Cal for a future baby, then we can, but we can't ever,
Right.
like, he is Cal and he will always be Cal. So we knew we wanted to name Lenny before she was born, but we never called her that before she was born, and we didn't tell anyone what her name was going to be. So I don't know. It's like those weird things that, yeah, people are like asking me all the time, what are you going to name your baby? What are you going to name your baby? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know yet, So I don't know if that's weird or not, but that's just how we do it.
I think we all do things to cope and make it through. And like some people keep names private just because. And, you got to do whatever you gotta to get through pregnancy. So,
yeah, for sure. So yeah, we left the hospital that same day. That was another extremely hard moment and something that will always be like ingrained in my memory. I remember the social worker asking me if I wanted to carry a bear like out of the hospital. And I was just like, no, I don't want to carry a bear out of the hospital. Like, I want to be holding my baby,
right.
You're insane. You would ask me that. I know it was out of love, but yeah, that was another just extremely hard moment, is leaving him there. Yeah. The other thing that the hospital had that I found out is not readily available in a lot of hospitals is a cooling cradle. So it's basically like a plastic cradle, like that you would see baby, that you put living babies in, but there's a refrigeration system built within it. So it keeps like the baby cool to preserve them for longer. And so, yeah, I think that that's something that's so amazing, because I've talked to other moms who have not had that, and they like just talk about that experience, and it's so sad. Like, they have to keep putting ice packs under the baby, and just something
Things
you
you don't
don't,
think about.
yeah, like something you don't think about and you don't want to have to do when you are like trying to spend time with your baby. So yeah, we are very lucky here to have some of those things, again, because of other lost moms who have provided those experiences, to try to make those experiences better in any way they can. So yeah. Oh yeah, the days following were like the worst. The months following were the worst. Coming home to all of his things here was something that I don't think that people think about. Like,
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I know that the topics that we talk about on this podcast can be heavy and bring up a lot of emotions for people, and that's no reason to shy away from these conversations. If you're a fan of trying to get these conversations out to as many people as possible, I could use your help. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the podcast helps it reach more people. I always love to hear your feedback on the episodes that we put out and the topics that you want to hear more about. So head to www.redbirdcounselingnmn.com. From there, you can send me an email and join our online email community to get more updates about the podcast and everything happening mental health and Redbird counseling. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Redbird Counseling MN, and Facebook, Redbird Counseling MN 21. Until next time, remember, you're not alone, your story matters, be kind to yourself, and don't be afraid to color outside the lines.